Okay, guys, so just another quick video. This one shouldn't take too long. Again, I'm going to have other videos that will have the important bacterial diseases that I'm concerned with you knowing for this class and what will show mostly up on your final. So this is just going to be kind of a brief overview of other different types of bacterial diseases as well, or infections as well. So and again, bacteria, there's a number of different ways in which disease in which bacteria can cause disease. Usually it's just that there's a lot of colonization and they adhere or sometimes insert themselves into the cells. And they basically have different factors, different proteins and stuff that can prevent phagocytosis, suppress the host immune system. And then they also usually have an endotoxin of some sort or an exotoxin, any type of toxin that can be given off that will cause for disease to last long after they leave the body. Okay, so exotoxins, those are enterotoxins, neurotoxins, cytotoxins, and they can also produce sometimes some destructive enzymes as well. So some bacterial infections of the skin. Realistically, the only one that's really kind of important for you to know is about Streptococcus pyogenes and Staph aureus. The other one's like acne. That's actually technically a bacterial infection of the skin. Usually that involves your normal flora. You have anthrax. Again, that can be a bacterial infection. Most of the time, the deadly anthrax that they talk about is a bacterial infection of the lungs. Gangrene, gas gangrene, leprosy. Again, both of those are also going to be considered bacterial infections of the skin. So when it comes to Staph aureus, staph is actually found, mostly we know it's found within our nose, and it can actually cause a lot of different issues. And also, in addition, they release toxins, which we will talk about, that can cause for toxic shock syndrome, skeletal skin syndrome, and food poisoning as well. So Staph aureus can do that, but for the most part, most of the time, what you're going to see is you're going to see it within your nose. Toxic shock syndrome is the one it's notorious for. But again, it can also cause cellulitis, some wound infections, things along those lines. When it comes to strep pyogenes, so this is pretty much usually what causes, again, most of the time, strep. It can evolve into your typical strep throat. But in addition, you can get pneumonia, you can get rheumatic fever, you can get scarlet fever, which is going to be a skin infection. You can also get within there, it can also come into necrotizing fasciitis, which is another terrible infection. So a lot of different things that this can cause. If you have any wound infections, typically what happens is that they're going to be like surgical procedures or cuts of some sort, and your opportunistic normal flora will actually move within that area and cause disease. The only time that it's really an issue is if it becomes a systemic infection where it spreads through the blood of the lymph nodes. Okay. So here, these are going to be our two ear infections, and they can be caused by a variety of different bacteria. Again, Staph aureus here. So you get the idea. Again, most of the time, this is just going to be considered that. We can also have pink eye that's bacterial, so bacterial conjunctivitis. And again, most of these are also going to look very similar to pink eye. They're also going to be caused by different bacteria. Okay, so this is just one that's a example of a situation within your eyes. Okay, next. So then we also have one within the respiratory tract. So your strep throat is actually caused by strep pyogenes, pyrogenes. Again, this is going to be a gram-positive cocci that's in a chain, because anytime you have strep, you're within a chain. Again, here, this is going to be diphtheria. This is going to occur through air droplets. And then obviously pneumonia, you do have, you can get either bacterial pneumonia or viral pneumonia. Most commonly, this is caused by S. pneumoniae, but it can also be caused by, and it's the most common cause of pneumonia in general, but it can be caused by other things as well. Okay, so this is Streptococcus pneumoniae. Okay. So lower respiratory tract, again, this is mycoplasma pneumoniae. Again, these are gram negatives. They're going to occur in your lower respiratory tracts. And this is another type of pneumonia, essentially, but it's called Legionnaires' disease or Pontiac fever. You can also get within there tuberculosis and whooping cough. Whooping cough is usually caused by Bordetella. It's why when you have dogs that have their own kind of version of what they call kennel cough, it's not the same bacteria, but it's a similar bacteria. It's why the whooping cough sounds the same, sounds very similar from a dog and from an actual person as well. And tuberculosis, we do have, TB, we do have a TB test now that you're required to get to enter into most, educational institute, any educational job position, or, as a doctor, a lot of times you have to get those as well. And the idea is just basically it's going to be through direct contact that you would get it. But we do have treatment for it now. We did not have treatment beforehand. That's why it was so terrible, in the early, 1700s, 1800s. It wasn't until the 1900s that tuberculosis actually had a treatment. Okay. Now, when we talk about oral cavity, you guys should know this, gingivitis, periodontal disease. Again, these are all can be caused by specific bacteria within your normal flora or stuff that you just are not brushing out appropriately. So usually whenever you have this type of acute necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis or trench mouth, this can be caused by 2 or more cc's of the ingenious oral microbiota, which is also considered your normal flora. Again, you can have within the GI tract, you can have ulcers. We've already kind of talked about, we'll review this again, about Helicobacter pylori. Again, this is something that you can find within your normal flora, but it can also be transmitted through ingestion, presumably through oral or fecal-oral situation. So again, you got a contaminated of some sort, contaminated water or something along those lines, and that's how you get it. You get here. This is another type here. Again, not really a super one that we're concerned with. Cholera is one that we are concerned with. And that's because it is a very common one. It's a more common one. This is actually not really found in most areas. It's kind of in a water-heavy environment, which is unusual because most bacteria either want just a normal water environment or they want a waterless environment. So this is a little bit different. This is a water-heavy environment is what it's looking for. And it's a bacillus that secretes, an enterotoxin, which causes you to have issues. Transmission usually comes through the fecal-oral route, so you're actually going to get it through, remember we talked about this. This is a Vibrio cholera was how they discovered essentially the idea of tracking diseases in the early 1900s. And then Salmonella, again, this is going to essentially release an endotoxin, and it produces a lot of different cytotoxins as well. We'll talk about all of those in the other video. But just know that it occurs, like you'll also talk about this too, but most of the time it comes through contaminated food or contaminated water, and also eggs, badly handled chicken. Those are good things for Salmonella. Okay, so Salmonella is actually also responsible for typhoid fever. Again, both very similar. Again, they're going to be the same. There's going to be a little bit of different of Salmonella species. And then the Shiga bacteria dysentery. This is basically when you have bloody stool. So the big one here is Shigella flexneri. This actually can pass the Shiga toxin, which is responsible for this, to other types of bacteria, including E. coli, which is what we get here. The EHEC. This one is the most. This is the most potent, I would say, E. coli. It's responsible for more of the issues within. They're not as common, but it is a little bit more of an issue, and it usually occurs through just basically you get contaminated food. Same thing with this one. This is the more common type. It has the less dangerous toxins. Now, don't get me wrong, it does have toxins, and we'll talk about all of those in the other PowerPoint. Okay, so UTIs. So UTIs are mostly caused by E. coli. However, they can also be caused by other stuff. They can also be caused by fungi. So they're going to mostly be involved with any type of, you either have the, E. coli, you can get some staph will allow for that. So Staph aureus or Staph epidermis or Pseudomonas. They're usually concerned. They usually can be within a healthcare setting or elsewhere. So sometimes if you don't go, like, a lot of times people who work in, high customer service industries, such as being a waitress or being working in the, retail food field and are working for over 8 hours a day, a lot of times, and they don't go to the bathroom enough, that's when you can get a UTI. And that's another thing. Okay. So some bacterial STDs. So ones that'll be transmitted via sexual transmission. So obviously chlamydia is one of them. Chlamydia is a very common type. Gonorrhea and syphilis are all examples. Again, we're not really super concerned with these, but they can occur basically through direct sexual contact or sometimes from mother to baby, which is why if you have chlamydia, it's something that the doctors need to know during birth. So it's an example there. It's a gram-negative bacteria. Gonorrhea, again, this is going to be a diplococci, which is going to essentially just be like pairs. It's gram-negative as well. And again, sexual contact. Or you can, if you get any type of mucus to mucous membrane contact, you can get gonorrhea. That's why some people have gonorrhea of the mouth as well. It's not quite as common, but it is a possible. And then syphilis, again, this is going to be through either dealing with your lesions or body secretion. And most of the time it happens through sexual contact. Okay. Some other lesser known ones. These are just some lesser known ones. Again, review these. They're not too super important. These don't really happen as much in the United States. The big three here are what you would see in the United States. These ones are found in other countries where bacteria has evolved a little bit more because of the environments that they're in. So you can also transmit many different types many different STDs at the same time. So that's why if you have one particular STD, you should get a full workup to see what else you have of STDs wise. Okay. Now, when we're talking about any type of cardiovascular one, and most of the ones that I'm talking about, like staph can attack your cardiovascular system, but it's not quite as common. So the big one is going to be typhus fever, and that's going to be either through spotted fever or endemic typhus fever. And there are going to be two different types of this Rickettsia bacteria. It's a gram-negative bacteria, and usually this comes from ticks. Okay, or any type of, a lot of times here we can have rats, mice, or possible other animals, but most of the time they come through the vector route, where they're either going to be from a insect or from another animal. Okay, and this is kind of what looks like the spotted fever. Usually that can attack your cardiovascular system. Okay, two other ones, and epidemic typhus fever. Again, this is only going to be through infected humans, or if you have lice, that could be an example where you would get this. But this is low-spore typhus. And then we also have another type here. Again, we're not really sure what the reservoir is, but most of the transmission comes from a tick bite. Lyme disease can also affect your cardiovascular system. This, again, only occurs through a tick bite. Again, it's gram-negative. It's a spiral one. Now, if we're talking about rabbit fever down here. Again, this is the reason why it's called what it's called, is because it's transmitted via tick bite, but mostly those ticks have to be attached to, or at some point were associated with, a rabbit. The plague, okay, or the bubonic plague, pneumonic plague, systemic plague, okay, this is going to be basically it's a coccobacillus. It's a gram-negative, and this is what we consider, in the early 1500s that caused a lot of death in Europe. Again, this comes from wild rodents and their fleas. And again, remember that time period, most people were taking, at the most, if they were taking a bath of anything, they were going out to a stream to do it. So we don't have, running water at that time. So this is why those types of things were running wild, because we didn't have, fleas were kind of a common thing back then. Okay, that's going to be your bullseye rash. That's a good indication of a Lyme, if you have Lyme's disease or if you've been bit by a deer tick. Okay, just some more lesions. Now, when it comes to the central nervous system, so the big one here is going to be Clostridium tetani. This is going to be a gram-positive bacteria that's found in Bacillus. This is the one that can also form spores, and it's found in like the dirt, like really, really dirty areas, like dirt. No, it doesn't like oxygen. It doesn't like it doesn't like oxygen. It's not in a good area. It's very anaerobic, and it's considered lockjaw. Okay, and it needs to occur usually through a puncture wound that you have with contamination with your soil that's been contaminated by tetanus. Okay, and this is kind of someone who has had basically the tetanus situation kind of almost get like contorted into a weird location. Okay. So these are just the last two. I would review these, but again, most of the time when we're talking about these, again, I'm not going to be concerned about where the bacterial infection occurs. I'm going to be more concerned with what the bacterial infection is. Okay. So we're going to go ahead for the next PowerPoint. We're going to go and we won't have any more PowerPoints, but we'll have like at least two more videos for you to watch as well.